it seems to me that the fundamental weakness in the system is still that faculties of education have a hammerlock on teacher certification. So, because, I know people who are sending their kids to private schools, but the private schools are full of woke teachers too, right? The Catholic schools are full of woke teachers. Like, it's a pervasive problem. And so I want to know your thoughts on the teacher certification issue, because I think what the Republicans should do is they should just take the monopoly away from the faculty.
We need alternative certification. So I think you're right that we have to have a multi-pronged approach. School choice isn't the silver bullet for everything, and neither is alternative certification. We should fight the battle on multiple fronts. And some people do set up this false dichotomy. They'll say, "Oh, you're saying school choice will cure everything." Well, not exactly. We should also reform the public school system. You should still go to your school board and try to change things, because a lot of kids are still going to go to the public schools, whether you have school choice or not. But we also need an escape valve. I mean, for example, if you only try to change the system from the top down, which is what we've done partially in my home state of Texas, some good tweaks. They've banned critical race theory. They're talking about banning DEI in public schools this year as well. We have Trump with his executive orders helping out as well. But we have undercover video from a group called Accuracy in Media. They've gone into all these public school districts in red states like my home state of Texas, where they've gotten these administrators to admit on undercover video that they're still teaching things that are banned. So
sure, of course they are.
And they're proud about it. They're like, we're still doing CRT, but we're just going to call it something else.
How do you ban ideas? Like, this is
behind closed doors. They continue to do what they want.
Well, you see this in the universities too. It's like, well, we're going to scrap our DEI programs. It's like, they're not scrapping them. They're just renaming them. They just retitled this person, and they continue to do exactly the same thing. And you can camouflage what you're doing with words, no problem. It'll take people years to figure it out. And so this is another part. Okay, so
I'm not saying that we shouldn't try, because it isn't perfect enforcement, but we should have both of these. We need top-down accountability, but also bottom-up. For if you're a parent, you get a whiff of these things happening, even if you can't prove it before a judge and change the school system that way, you need to be able to say, you know what, screw this, I'm sending my kids somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think that would give a pressure for the public schools to say, let's knock it off. I don't want to irritate anybody on the left or the right. I'm going to focus on the basics, math, reading, and writing. And then, you're not going to have all of them. And so you might say, well, what about the private schools? Some of them, they also operate in this kind of small market right now already when you don't have choice. But when you unleash the market and families can vote with their feet, you'll have a different supply of private schools pop up as well. Especially right now, we're pushing something called education savings accounts. It's kind of like a voucher where you can use it for a private school, but you can also use it for homeschooling, micro-schooling. They were calling them pandemic pods during the COVID era, where 5 to 10 children were getting together in a household, kind of like the one-room schoolhouse idea. Those are more likely to sprout up, and you're more likely to have 1,000 flowers blooming if you have these low-cost options. And this has happened in Arizona, too.
So you think the diversity of school proliferation will eventually solve the ideological problem?
Yeah, because if you only have a couple elite private schools and they're captured by the left, it's kind of like, okay, what can I do now? I'd say that's still better than the status quo where you have zero choices, but at least now you can take the funding. If you want to just homeschool your own kids and use it for the curriculum or private tutors, that is a step in the right direction.
Are
even if it's not
many
perfect.
or most of the school choice programs set up so that you could set up a micro school and educate your own children?
Most of them now are, and Arizona has an education savings account. They've had one for over a decade. They just went all in 2022, making it available to everybody. They actually crashed the government website in Arizona because so many families signed up right when they opened up the floodgates.
It's an interesting twist on paying women to have children, because in some sense that's what you're setting up, right?
Yeah.
Well, because
which is what the public school system is already, right?
Yeah, right. It's subsidy for...
But it's a failing system that not a lot of people don't see it as a benefit.
Well, if it's $20,000 a year per child, and the typical family has 2 children, the woman has to make $40,000 a year to justify the subsidy. And so that's after expenses. And so that's a very, it's very unlikely.
Think about a classroom of, 30 kids, that's $600,000. Where's all the money going? If the teachers are only making $60,000 a year on average, Where's the rest? And it's
well, you could
towards these
figure
big
what 60
stadiums.
for overhead in terms of physical plant,
but
something like that. So
The
that's only
superintendents in
120,000.
Texas, a lot of them make more than the president of the United States. We have a half a dozen or so who make over $400,000 a year.
So so tell me, where does the so
a lot of buildings, they love building new schools and stadiums.
Yeah.
So one of the school districts in Texas, La Jolla ISD, made headlines recently because they had a big like a big water park at their campus.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that improves, the self-esteem of the kids or whatever the teachers are trying to do these days. But it's just frivolous things. And you see this at the university level too, right? They have these extravagant water parks and tuitions going up to cover these things, and also subsidies from the government too. But these micro schools are really shaking things up. The whole factory model itself is frightened because of this. In fact, when Prenda Micro Schools in Arizona was reporting just huge increases in enrollment during COVID because the government schools were closed. So families were figuring it out. And a lot of them went to these micro schools. The NEA, which is the largest labor union in the country, the National Education Association, they also lobbied the CDC to close the schools longer. They put out an opposition research sheet on Prenda Micro Schools and their founder, Kelly Smith, because they were so afraid of them basically providing something that they weren't providing to students. They knew they were going to lose funding because public schools are funded based on enrollment counts. And so if you lose some students, you're going to lose some money, whether you have a school choice program or not. And in Arizona, you can use those education savings accounts to pay for Prenda Micro Schools and other ones too.
Define micro school.
It's a miniature school, and some people, there's a lot of different definitions for it, but basically a miniature private school. And during COVID era, it was basically 5 to 10 children getting together in households to economize on homeschooling. And you can either do it with one of the parents, you can take turns with the parents doing different subjects, or you can even hire a private tutor to do it.
Which you could do if it's $20,000 per. So what is the amount of the typical voucher if student
Less.
expenditure? Why?
So it saves taxpayer money, and most of these bills are passed at the state level. In the U.S., we're funded in the public school system in every state by the federal level, which should not exist at all. The word education is not in our Constitution. It's an unconstitutional waste of time and money. But that's only about 8% of the total spending, 8 to 10%.
Okay.
The other 45 are state and local dollars. These bills are typically passed in state legislatures, so it's about half of the total that follows the student. So let's say on average 10,000 versus the 20,000 that's spent in the government schools. So
is any of that happening locally as well to pull in the rest of that money?
There have been some local vouchers that have passed in Colorado, a blue state. There was Douglas County had at once a couple decades ago passed a voucher program. It got nixed in the court by a lefty judge, and that program's no longer on the books. New Hampshire, which passed a state level program, also proposed a bill a year or two ago in their legislature to also allow the local districts to have the money follow the child if they opted in as well. That bill got tabled. That was one that I was really
that
excited.
revolution
But I think that's the next step in the revolution. But at the same time, if the private schools are doing it for less, and if the micro schools are doing a good job for less, do we want all of the dollars following the student? I think it should be equal across sectors. If we're going to spend the money, I think the state and local should follow the student, not just the state. But the reality is it's mostly basically everywhere at this point.
Well, and also the reality is, as you pointed out, that there's enough money at the state level to produce economic incentive for the micro schools, for example. You could imagine 5 kids together, that's $50,000 a year. That's a pretty good supplement for a given parent's income.